Jiri Prochazka, the Czech-born fighter's journey from tragic beginnings to being on the cusp of a second light heavyweight belt is as fascinating as his dynamic, calculated fighting style. The 6'4", 205-pound warrior has dominated every step of the way, relying on some of the most devastating knockout power in the world.
There it is! Jiri Prochazka!
In an extremely unique and unorthodox style that continually leaves both fans and opponents on the edge of their seat. After rising up the ranks in the well-regarded RIZIN Fighting Federation out of Japan, Prochazka found himself being crowned the light heavyweight champion of the UFC. However, a devastating injury cost the Czech nearly an entire year of activity, and saw his treasured UFC title become vacant. Hailing from Znojmo, a picturesque town in the Czech Republic, Jiri's journey to MMA stardom was not a straight path. When he was only 6 years old, he tragically lost his father. The young boy was crushed, and took the pain of losing his father and put it toward activity, playing football, floorball, and taking up BMX riding in his youth. Something else he took up during his youth was fighting. In fact, as a teen, Prochazka was known for routinely getting into street fights, and he estimates he was in over 100 of them as a teenager. He also earned the reputation of winning these fights, and eventually joined a local hooligan gang, where he and others would organize massive 30-on-30 street fights against rival gangs. Eventually, a friend of his introduced him to the world of MMA, and after becoming enamored with the sport, he began training in martial arts as he began high school. Jiri hit the ground running, delving into training a number of different martial arts. However, he took a special liking to Thai boxing and Muay Thai. The young Prochazka quickly showed promise, and by the time he was 17, he made his professional debut in MMA for the Gladiator Fighting Championship, the largest promotion in the Czech Republic at the time. Being 17 seemingly didn't matter at all, as just over a year later, the now 19-year-old Jiri found himself with a 7-2 record, on the cusp of a GCF lightweight heavyweight championship. But it wasn't just his record that was impressing the locals, it was the way in which he was getting the results. From his very first fight against Stanislav Futuera, it was obvious that Prochazka was built different. His power and unorthodox striking prowess was simply too much to overcome, and his first 3 fights, all victories, came by way of first-round knockouts. He had lost 2 fights, both in the first round, but he was making waves around the Czech Republic as being an absolute brawler that was to be feared. On December 7th, 2013, Jiri took the next big step in his MMA career, when he landed a beautiful flying knee to the head of Marin Soltz, solidifying himself as the GCF's light heavyweight champion. The clip of the flying knee went viral around the country, and Prochazka earned a performance bonus and having the fight named Czech Fight of the Year. The next 2 years consisted largely of the same for Jiri. By the end of 2015, he had defended his belt 5 times, having tasted disappointment just once in a draw against Mikhail Mochnatkin in December of 2014. Nevertheless, it was clear that there were bigger and better things in the cards for Prochazka, and in December of 2015, it was announced that he had signed to the RIZIN Fighting Federation in Japan, sporting a 14-2-1 record. Prochazka made his RIZIN debut at the 2015 RIZIN World Grand Prix, where he defeated Satoshi Ishii in the first round of the quarterfinal bout. He then beat Vadim Nemkov via TKO to set up a championship fight against Mohamed Lawal on December 31st, 2015. Jiri lost the fight as Lawal was able to land a devastating right hook that knocked him out cold. His journey within RIZIN had started off with a bang, just not quite the bang he made.
Thank you. It's good scenario. Hey man, you brought it, bro.
However, his KO loss to Lawal would not be the story of his overall RIZIN tenure. In fact, Prochazka used the defeat to take his training and mindset to another level, and by the end of 2018, he hadn't lost another fight. His jump in performance led to an inaugural RIZIN Light Heavyweight Championship fight being booked against none other than Mohamed Lawal. Revenge was within his sights. King Mo entered the fight with a record of 21-9. Through the first 2 rounds of the fight, it was clear that Jiri was by far the better fighter. Lawal seemed to be completely gassed out by the middle of the second round, and fans watched intently as it seemed Jiri could do something special at any moment. With just over 2 minutes left in the third round, they got what they wished for. Prochazka landed a flurry of punches, wobbling Lawal at first until eventually dropping him, leading to a referee stoppage.
Let's take a look at it here because his footwork was gone at this point here, right?
And then
Prochazka just understands that he knew at the end was coming. He just kept...
Jiri had gotten the revenge he so desperately desired, and had a freshly minted championship belt to go along with it. He was no longer a regional star. His stardom had gone global. After knocking out Fabio Maldonado in the first round of a catchweight bout at RIZIN 19 and defending his light heavyweight title against CB Dollaway at RIZIN 20, he got the call that every fighter dreams of. Jiri would be vacating his RIZIN title and heading to the UFC. After signing to the UFC in early 2020, Prochazka made his debut for the promotion on July 12th against Volkan Ozdemir at UFC 251 in Abu Dhabi. At a time when most sports were completely shut down at the height of the global pandemic, Jiri found himself with a unique opportunity to make a massive splash onto the UFC scene, and he did just that. Ozdemir was 17-4 at the time, and the 7th ranked light heavyweight. He was no small task for the newcomer on paper, but inside the octagon, it was a different story. The first round saw both fighters go back and forth, trading glancing blows without any real damage done. For one round at least, Jiri looked the part of a UFC contender. In the second round, however, he proved that his potential was much higher than just a contender. After landing a flush high kick less than a minute into the second round, Jiri faked a flying knee before landing a beautiful combination that sent Ozdemir crumbling to the floor.
Here it is, the head kick that started it, and you watched, look at the reaction. He was very wobbly on his feet there. He's probably not thinking straight, thought about a flying knee, looked for an elbow, lays back, jab, big right hand. I mean, that was it. I mean, you saw the reaction.
Prochazka was not only a UFC fighter, he was now 1-0. And the buzz around the Czech truly began to gain steam. After nearly a year of inactivity, Prochazka returned to the octagon for UFC on ESPN, Reyes vs Prochazka. After his beautiful victory in his debut, Jiri was ranked 5th in the light heavyweight division, and it only made sense that after beating the previous number 7 ranked fighter, his next opponent needed to be a jump up in competition. He got just that in Dominic Reyes, ranked number 3 at the time. Reyes was known for his devastating power and sported victories over some of the cream of the crop of UFC talent in his career, including Jared Cannonier, Ovin St. Pro, and Chris Weidman. He was coming off 2 crushing defeats to John Jones and Jan Blachowicz, both of which were for the light heavyweight belt, and he needed a victory over Prochazka to get back for a 3rd chance at the title. He was easily the biggest test of Jiri's career, and fans around the world expected an explosive fight, and they got just that. The start of the first round saw both fighters trade blows, and Reyes even scored a takedown around the 3-minute mark. However, Jiri quickly got to his feet and went on the offensive. Reyes survived the first round but was wobbled multiple times. In the second, Jiri took it up a notch and simply overpowered Reyes. After getting a takedown of his own, the two returned to their feet, where Jiri landed a crisp spinning back elbow that shut Reyes' lights out.
He is not getting back up anytime soon. Right elbow, left elbow, finds the target, out like a light, job done. My word, we got a new contender.
He was now 2-0, and had earned another Performance of the Night bonus along the way. After his dismantling of Dominic Reyes, it was abundantly clear that Prochazka was ready for a title shot. At UFC 275 in Singapore, he got his chance against Glover Teixeira. At the time, Teixeira was 33-7 and was coming off a victory over Jan Blachowicz for the light heavyweight title. He was known for his power as well as his excellent grappling prowess, something Jiri had yet to deal with in his young UFC career. In one of the most intense and grueling title fights in UFC history, both men had excellent moments throughout the 5-round affair. At the beginning, it seemed that Teixeira's wrestling would be the X factor. He was able to score multiple takedowns in the first round, and while Jiri was able to land some good shots, he looked to be outmatched. However, he put his foot on the gas to start the second round, landing some really good punches and a knee before getting in some ground and pound with Teixeira on his back. However, Glover landed a devastating left hook, dropping Jiri and nearly resulting in a TKO. The third round saw more back and forth action, with Prochazka opening the round with a signature creative striking. He seemed to be focusing on getting in good body work, which paid dividends as the fight played out. Towards the end of the round, Jiri went for a triangle choke, which Glover was able to counter and regain top control. In the fourth, Teixeira landed another beautiful left hook that massively hurt Prochazka and used it to take him down again. He worked to attempt a triangle choke of his own, but Jiri was able to get out of it. Both men were covered in blood, breathing deeply and ready to put their lives on the line in the 5th and final round. Jiri appeared to be ahead, but in the world of judges' scorecards, anything is possible. One of the men wanted to leave no doubt, and it was their last round to do it. After an action-packed round that saw both men inflict more damage on their opponent, Prochazka saw one final opportunity for victory and took it. With less than a minute left in the fight, he ended up on the side of Glover's back and took the chance to throw a rear naked choke. It sank in deeply, almost instantly, and there was nothing the Brazilian veteran could do. Teixeira tapped, and Jiri Prochazka was the UFC's light heavyweight champion.
Nearly at the gun! There is a new light heavyweight champion! The Czech!
And here it is. Glover's trying to fight the hands off here, but he's got it. He had it locked in. You can't really see from that angle. You see the tap. Here it is, locked in again. No hooks, none required. You're tired. You're in the 5th round. You've had the crap kicked out of you. And when you're choking your neck, you're only human. You're only human.
When all was said and done, their bout was named both Fight of the Night and Fight of the Year in 2022. Shortly after, the two were booked for a rematch at UFC 282 in December of 2022. Unfortunately, however, Prochazka was forced to miss the fight and eventually vacate his title after sustaining what Dana White described as the worst shoulder injury he had ever seen.
That night when it all went down and we had our doctor look at him, the doctor literally said, in all the years of the UFC, this is the worst shoulder injury we've ever seen.
Jiri faced nearly a year off after having surgery to repair the injury. And based on Dana's comments, some fans wondered if he'd ever be able to fight again. Fortunately, that answer was yes. On November 11th, 2023, at UFC 295, Jiri returned to the octagon to face former middleweight champion Alex Pereira for the vacant light heavyweight title. As if the fight itself wasn't tantalizing enough, the backing storylines added even more flames to the fire. Pereira is a UFC newcomer in his own right, exploding onto the UFC scene in 2021 in a quest to defeat rival Israel Adesanya, who he faced numerous times in kickboxing. He did just that at UFC 281 in New York City, before losing the rematch and jumping up to light heavyweight to face former champion Jan Blachowicz. He defeated Blachowicz by split decision, announcing his intention to stay at light heavyweight and win a second UFC belt. Thus, an ultra exciting bout between two absolute forces of nature was set. On top of each man's fighting prowess, there were also deeper connections at play. Pereira is a personal friend and understudy of Glover Teixeira's, making revenge by proxy a real potential. Unfortunately for Jiri, Pereira was the better man. After one of the all-time great pre-fight stare-downs in UFC history, and a first round that was fairly even, but likely sided to Alex, the dream of reclaiming his belt was completely demolished in the second round. After clipping Pereira with a beautiful right hand, Jiri got caught with a counter left hook, sending him crumbling to the ground. From there, Alex was able to land several devastating elbows before being stopped by the ref. Almost instantaneously, cries from UFC fans on social media began pouring out, claiming a terribly early stoppage had robbed them of a potential top 10 UFC bout of all time. Unfortunately, there was nothing that can be done at this point. After a year away, Jiri came up short in his returning glory. However, in the aftermath of the fight, he acted exactly how one would expect him to, full of class and determination to fight his way back to the top. Only time will tell to see if Jiri's return from his devastating injury will be just a bump in the road or a fork in it. But either way, what the young boy from the Czech Republic has been able to make of himself is truly awe-inspiring.